Folks, today is Thursday, July 9th, 2026. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Residents of DeSoto County, Mississippi have filed a federal lawsuit challenging the creation of a majority black judicial subdistrict, saying it violates the Voting Rights Act. White folks doing what they do. 2 fatal shootings by federal task force officers in Memphis in just 4 days will explain the new calls for outside investigations and accountability. You'll also hear from one of the folks who participated in the search for Nolan Wells, who says he's having a hard time believing what some say happened to the 18-year-old. And whiny white Republican lawmakers actually sent a letter to the WNBA demanding accountability because of the hard files against the great white hope, Caitlin Clark. Y'all, seriously. Also, Virginia Senator Mark Warner warns that unchecked power for 2 more years could seriously damage the country. He's talking about the twice impeached, criminally convicted Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
Well, after the Supreme Court in their Louisiana versus Calais decision basically gutted the Voting Rights Act, white folks are on the rampage, this time in DeSoto County, Mississippi, where they have filed a federal lawsuit challenging the creation of a majority black judicial subdistrict. The lawsuit targets the Mississippi governor, Secretary of State, and the Attorney General in response to the legislature's approval of additional judges for the DeSoto County Circuit and Chancery Courts, who would be elected from this majority black subdistrict. The lawsuit claims that lawmakers violated the Voting Rights Act by creating the new judicial maps, claiming they are racially motivated and mathematically problematic, and assert that the maps deny 3 out of 4 DeSoto Countyans the right to vote based on race. Although the legislature withdrew the court district in 2025 following population changes, it still sought to ensure that black voters could elect their preferred candidates. A hearing on the case is scheduled for later this month. We have seen this continue to happen all across the country. And what people have to understand is that we told y'all this was coming. We told you what was going to happen, that the Calais decision went beyond congressional districts. The Calais decision also impacted state races, judicial races, on and on and on. And so that's what you got going on. And so we have been, making this case and trying to get people to understand. This is the, I'm going to show you right here. This is the story in the Associated Press regarding this very issue. Several DeSoto County residents, including former Republican gubernatorial candidate and current county supervisor Robert Foster, have filed a federal lawsuit arguing that the legislature's creation of majority black subdistricts for the state judiciary violates the Voting Rights Act. So they go through here, and this is what they say. The lawsuit was filed against the 3-member state board of election commissioners. Of course, that's the governor, the secretary of state, and the attorney general. Now look at this here. State Senator Mike McClendon, the Republican from Hernando, is not a party to the litigation, but he told Mississippi Today in a statement that he supports the lawsuit. DeSoto County was singled out. This is bad legislation that was designed to deny you the opportunity to vote for judges who will exercise authority over every person in this county. No, that's not what the whole deal is. And y'all know what's going on. Look at this story. It says, when legislative leaders withdrew the court district in 2025, they changed the districts to account for population shifts and caseload data. But they also allowed for a majority black subdistrict in certain areas to give black voters a chance to elect candidates of their choice. The legislature first created judicial subdistricts in the late 80s and 90s, partially at the urging of former state representative Ed Blackman Jr., a longtime Democratic legislator from Canton. See, look at this right here. Almost every single judge I talked to in the state wanted it, Blackman said. They would say that's not a bad thing. But what you have to understand here is that this is about whiteness. It's about denying black power. My panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University out of Washington, D.C., Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show. Every Saturday on Sirius XM Radio, joining us from D.C., Dr. Larry J. Walker, Associate Professor, University of Central Florida out of Orlando. Greg, I'm going to start with you. And this is the thing that we keep saying with this war on black America. If we look at the period of Reconstruction, and if people read Du Bois's book on black Reconstruction, they can read Eric Foner's book on Reconstruction, they will understand what Reconstruction was about. It was white people. Reconstruction did not actually last 12 to 15 years, okay? After about 4 or 5 years, maybe 6, white folks were like, hey, we've done enough of these former slaves. Can we just move on? And that has been the history of this country. This country always wants to quickly move on. It doesn't actually want to reconstruct. It doesn't want to right the wrongs. It doesn't want to reimagine. It wants to be patchwork. And we're facing the situation we're facing today, right now, because of a series of decisions. I'm in a chat group, they were talking about who can we really blame for this? And many point to Abe Lincoln removing a radical Republican as his vice president and putting in the racist Southerner Andrew Johnson. And then they talked about the Hamburg massacre. The anniversary, I think, was yesterday or today as well. When you start looking at what has happened in this country, the reality is the Southern folks never really had to deal with Reconstruction. For them, it was about the lost cause. It was about how can we reconstruct or reconstitute white power in these southern states. And so what we have seen with the Reconstruction Amendments, with the battles during the Black Freedom Movement, battles during Jim Crow was trying to pick it away. And what we now see, what we now have are white nationalists, white supremacists who are saying we're going to claw back all that we had to give up when these Negroes got their rights as a result of the 64 Civil Rights Act, the 65 Voting Rights Act, and the 68 Fair Housing Act.
Yes. Yes, it's true, Roland. We just, of course, we just passed the 250th anniversary of this criminal enterprise. And I spent much of the day down at the Bozo State Fair because I wanted to see for myself. And whatever it has been, however it has been described, doesn't match going down there and seeing these hapless white nationalists struggling and scraping in a comically absurd situation. By the way, everybody checking bags and security all around were black. So it was almost like we were in an antebellum era where the blacks were checking bags and the whites, all 15 of them, were streaming in and out of the place. But, you know, the thing that struck me most down there, which speaks to what you just laid out, is the hopelessness, the forced enthusiasm. Unlike the mid-19th century, the demographics have shifted significantly in the last 150 years. And what we are faced with here in Mississippi, DeSoto County, certainly is reeks of desperation. They are willing to throw all caution to the wind, all law to the wind, creating this quote-unquote majority-minority district, this black carve-out whereas right now there are 3 total chancery court judges, they'll add a 4th, and where there are 4 total, two total chancery court judges, they'll add 1, and 3 total circuit court judges, they'll add 1. Everybody in the polity will vote for 2 of the 3 in the terms of chancery court and 3 of the 4 in terms of circuit court, but only the carve-out majority-minority district, the black district, will vote for the 4th. And what does that mean? That means that the state is trying to circumvent the possibility of everybody participating to make it so that only black people in a shrunken form, 77.4% of the residents will not have a vote on this additional seat. What does that mean? And of course, what they're saying is in the legislature, in the state legislature, Representative Horan, Kevin Horan, explicitly said, we've created additional African-American subdistricts. But what they're trying to do is what we, as we talked about in the Alabama case, is pack. Now, how does that relate to what you just laid out in terms of history reconstruction very powerfully? They've never had white power in this country. What they've had is a desperate attempt to suppress black power and non-white power. They're losing their grip, but what they are risking, finally, I think this is where we really have to pay attention and really get involved. What they are risking is any notion of the rule of law or of a society where you can rely on the apparatus of the state. When that is gone, what will replace it won't be their ability to continue to try to lower things over us and control. What will replace it will be a thoroughgoing renegotiation of the terms of the polity. They're going to break it, Roland. I've been saying it all along. And when they do, we have to be prepared to build what comes next. So, this is just another case of them going beyond the pale to try to get what they think they want, but they're going to get a little bit closer to the thing that they are most afraid of.
You look at the data, Larry. This is from the 2020 census. DeSoto County, Mississippi. White alone, 57.3%. Black alone, 36.5%. And then 2% Asian, 6.5% Hispanic or Latino. And really what you have here, this is the third most populous county in the state. And what you really got here, these white folks like, oh, no. We ain't trying to let these Negroes have any power. So we want to be able to elect everybody. We are not trying to allow them to elect anybody. We want white control over all of these judicial positions.
You highlighted some really important points, Roland. And this is, as you highlighted about the Supreme Court decisions, it's not just about congressional seats. It's just not federal, it's state and local. And this is an example. One important points I think we have to note is that Mississippi has the highest percentage of Black people in the country. And that's the first point. The second point is relates to, this fight we fought for years to reverse years of Jim Crow. The idea that they use the Voting Rights Act to suggest somehow this is, I guess, some kind of reverse discrimination. And once again, the fight to dilute Black political power, in which Black people fought for generations just to get some crumbs at the table. And after some of the progress that they perceive over the last several years, they're trying to reverse all those gains. And we're seeing it in real time. This is another example. We should also realize this, to your point earlier, Roland, this is not the only time we're going to see this attempt, once again, using the Voting Rights Act and the recent Supreme Court decision to suggest in some way that, if whatever kind of carve out is, certainly at the state local level, is unconstitutional. The other point I want to make, Roland, is we talk a lot about this recent Supreme Court decision, but as Dr. Carr can certainly talk about is we talk about Shelby County versus Holder, and where some of this really began in terms of reversing some of the really important policies that relates to the Voting Rights Act, so pre-clearance for states like Mississippi, et cetera. So this fight is ongoing, and we're going to have to continue to make sure, whether they talk about midterms or not, certainly other elections, that we fight this at every way possible, because we're going to continue to see, once again, Black political power be diluted before the point that we'll find that we have no Black representation in areas that have a large percentage of African Americans.
1890, Mississippi had a constitutional convention, Reese, because the white racists were like, we tired of seeing these Black folks elected. Denied Black folk the right to vote. Isaiah Montgomery was the only African-American delegate. He went along with that, thinking that it was going to get better later. The folks there in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, say he was trying to protect the town as well. But if you read his later writings, he realized that vote was a mistake. Frederick Douglass ripped him for the decision as well. And ever since then, in Mississippi, these white folks there said, we ain't trying to let Negroes have no power whatsoever. And in fact, they changed it to the point where even if you won statewide, you had to win congressional districts too. I mean, it wasn't just you got the most votes statewide. you had to also win in the congressional district. And so they were very methodical in trying to wipe out black power, and it's worked. And so it's continuing in 2026. They don't want to see black advancement. White Republicans don't want to see that in Mississippi.
Right. They want black people to literally have nothing. I mean, debate is about a subdistrict, not an entire district. If you have to date a majority black district, then by definition, that means that every other district is probably a majority white district. So it's not about having one race be the majority. It's about having black people be the majority to the extent to where they can actually influence the outcome. That's a basic tenet of citizenship. We're not supposed to be 3/5 anymore, but nowadays it's looking more like 0/5, because if you vote and your vote goes down the fucking toilet because you are gerrymandered in a certain way, you're packed in a certain way, you're cracked a certain way, that's not giving us citizenship. And so this is why we cannot rely on the notion of white benevolence. We cannot rely on the idea of race neutral or fair, because it's never going to be neutral for them. And they don't even want to give an inch. They are relentless. And so we need to stop being afraid. I'm not saying that I'm not blaming black people in Mississippi by any means, but I'm saying taking this out to a broader lens, we need to stop being afraid to ask for too much, because anything we ask for is too much for these white nationalists.
Yeah, and folk, I just need our people to understand this is going to continue, especially in the South. So black people, especially young black people, I need you to understand they want to rip all power from us. And so when we choose to not vote, when we choose to sit out of elections, then we're just helping their cause. And what we keep saying on this show, and we're going to continue to say on this show and trying to educate people, is that you have to understand the political process. And that is, politics is about money. Politics is about power. Politics is about control. Politics is about what infrastructure do you have? Rebuilding of schools, roads, bridges, improving water system, making massive changes to communities. I told y'all 42 CEOs traveled with Trump when he had his initial trip to the Middle East after he got inaugurated. If you think the 42 biggest companies in the world don't understand the power of politics, then you don't understand politics. And so we have to understand you've got city contracts, school board contracts, state contracts, federal contracts, on and on and on. You care about mass incarceration, criminal justice, guess what? That means you want to elect the right DA. That's politics. The right judges. That's politics. The right lawmakers. That's politics. And so what they are trying to do is they're trying to use the apparatus, and don't think for a second by them suing the governor, secretary of state, and the attorney general, those three individuals don't support their lawsuit. Oh, they absolutely do. So they don't mind getting sued, because what they do not want to see the creation of this black subdistrict. They want it all. And so we're going to keep pounding this issue. We're going to keep breaking this stuff down so you can understand as we head into the midterm elections, you need to be fully prepared for what these folks are trying to accomplish. Got to go to break. I'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.
Melanie Campbell, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and Black Women's Roundtable. And we are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered all day, every day, 24/7. Spread the word.
When we often have these commemorations, we really think about the major ones. We think about, obviously, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. We think about Bloody Sunday, which took place in Selma. We think about the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and there are a host of others. But there are a variety of events that took place in this country that we simply cannot ignore because it got us to this point. Here we are, where you have this white celebration of America's 250th anniversary. And I call it that because what their desire is to completely obscure the reality of our history. Today, there was a wreath-laying ceremony that took place in Hamburg, South Carolina. It remembered the victims of the Hamburg massacre. So this right here. This is the Post and Courier of North Augusta. This is their story. And so you see right here, they had this sign in memory of those killed in the Hamburg incident. This took place, y'all, July 4th. Between July 4th and July 9th, 1876. Okay, so that's 100 years after the declaration of the founding of the country and the celebration of country. And you see the names: Allen Attaway, Jim Cook, Thomas Merriweather, Albert Maynard, Nelder Parker, Moses Parker, David Phillips, Hampton Stevens. And so when you see this story, what you'll realize, again, 8 people died on that particular day. Hamburg was a thriving town. It was founded by black freedmen. They established that particular town. And then you had a fight between a white militia and a black militia. 1 white man died, 7 black folk died on that particular day. And this was one of those moments, okay? And again, this happened, y'all, during Reconstruction, towards the end of Reconstruction. That was, of course, an election in 1876 where they challenged the election there in South Carolina. That was a part of that whole thing that led to the Great Compromise of 1877, the agreement by the Republicans to withdraw federal troops from the South. And then that's when the racist Southern Democrats then said, okay, we're going to attack. First of all, they said, oh, no, we're going to leave the darkies alone. That's literally what they said. And then they turned around and attacked them. And then that's what put into place Jim Crow. So days like today, Greg, rarely get talked about. You now are seeing more people who become aware of Beyond Tulsa, the other race riots that took place, Red Summer, all the different things that happened. And the reason that stuff is important, and the reason we can't ignore these moments, because especially in this year, you have to understand that massacre, the role it played in the end of Reconstruction that led to Jim Crow and that 92-year period of slavery without shackles for black people.
Yeah, absolutely, Roland. And thank you for raising the Hamburg massacre. I think about my friends at the Zen Education Program, which have a whole lesson plan for school children that you can download to talk about that. It's a couple of things. It's very important to observe these ritual moments because they reinforce what we often refer to as the momentum of memory. When you remember, you can see the patterns. And certainly what we saw, as you mentioned, these 2 white farmers, Thomas Butler and Henry Getson, trying to drive a carriage through Hamburg while these brothers were engaged in a militia exercise. So you see the element that we always see, the provocation. We want to start something. And then they brought a formal complaint of obstruction of public road before the local court. in Hamburg. So now they want to weaponize the courts and the law. The July 4th, as you say, is when they tried to do it. They postponed the case until the 8th of July. And at that point, they demanded that the Hamburg militia company be disbanded. So here's another thing you see. Y'all can't have guns. Only we can have guns. And several of the brothers who were in the Hamburg militia were also in the legislature. Remember, the Republicans, who are very different, of course, than the Republicans today, were in control in South Carolina, as you say, Reconstruction government. And then, of course, that gave them time for a couple of hundred of these hillbillies to surround the armory. And they got into a pitched battle with the brothers, and that's where black men, black people were killed. So when we commemorate that, we remind ourselves of several things. Number one, they're always going to try to provoke us. Number two, they're always going to try to use the law to do it. And thank you, Roland, because if memory serves me correctly, today is also the anniversary of the passage of the 14th Amendment.
Yep.
And going back to what you mentioned, the first story you covered, the 14th Amendment, like the 13th, like the 15th, and like several subsequent to that, including the 19th as it relates to women and the lowering of voting age, these are not self-enforcing amendments. In other words, they have a section that requires Congress to pass legislation to enforce them. Most of the amendments in the Constitution don't have that, but those amendments have enforcement clauses, in part because that means that you can keep coming back to them if you want to pass different kind of laws. This is why, as you mentioned last week, this birthright citizenship case was not 6-3, but really 5-4, because what Kavanaugh said was, hey, if y'all pass a different law, maybe we can actually overturn birthright citizenship. But the Hamburg massacre finally gives us a chance in remembering it, to also remember the patterns in addition to honoring those ancestors. And so thank you, brother. It's always important to mark those moments in time to give us that opportunity. And
at that particular point, what we're constantly trying to explain to folks, Reese, that even when you talk about the 14th Amendment, we think about equal protection clause, due process, we think about, but what people don't realize is the 14th Amendment covers a whole bunch of stuff. It deals with citizenship. It deals with how folks, it deals with apportionment. It also deals with insurrection and rebellion against the United States. And it also lays out the individuals who can serve, in Congress. And so all those different things. But also the reason I think these events are important, I think about how what's sort of burned into our memory, especially the folks who understand history, the folks who were born after 1968, and you also had always the recounting of the shooting at Kent State in Ohio. But what's never talked about is the shooting in Orangeburg, the massacre in Orangeburg. Go to my iPad on February 8th, 1968, where 28 students were injured, 3 were killed. So they, and as you see right here with the Zen Education Project, most shot in the back by the state police while involved in a peaceful protest in Orangeburg, South Carolina. One of the folks who was there, it was Cleveland Sellers. That's the father of Bakari Sellers. And he actually was sentenced to a year in prison for inciting a riot. And he was the only person to do, as you see, later serving as the president of Voorhees College, he was the only person to do time. Now, again, we talk about that, but they also never talk about what happened on May 15th, 1970, Reese, when that was a shooting at Jackson State. Where police fired on students there, and 12 students were wounded and 2 were killed. Again, so we don't even have to go back to the Hamburg massacre of 1876 to recite how history gets obscured and ignored. We're talking about 1968, 1970. To this day, we've had documentaries and movies and all kind of stuff on Kent State, not Orangeburg and not Jackson State.
Well, that's clearly not accidental, number one. Part of what this country likes to do is gaslight Black people and make it seem like one day white folks grew a conscience and decided, hey, we can allow these Blacks to have a couple of rights, no big deal. when the reality is that it was hard fought for every single step of the way. And it took years, and it took a lot of bloodshed, and it took a lot of sacrifice. And so if you don't tell those stories, then you get to have this great white saviorism history being rewritten. And to be honest, they didn't save a whole lot. It's still a long way to go. But yeah, that's why these stories aren't told. They don't really want to talk about the horrors of what this country has inflicted and is still inflicting on Black people. But, the fact that this administration is doing so much, the fact that Republicans across the country are doing so much to try to stifle this history being told, no matter how small the display is, like what this administration sued in Philadelphia to get a couple of panels taken down about slavery. They are leaving no stone unturned in rewriting history and erasing history and putting forth a narrative that really obscures how dangerous white nationalists are, how dangerous white supremacy is, not just to Black people, but to the entire country.
Larry, people need to understand one of the reasons why these Confederate monuments went up all across the country, that was by design. They wanted to rewrite the narrative. They wanted to present this impression that all is well. You travel to all these places. You go to that massive Confederate monument there at the Texas State Capitol. Of course, they had that massive Robert E. Lee statue that was in the middle of Richmond, Virginia, that has since been torn down and melted. We can go on and on and on. And what you have right now, you have the Republican Party. See, they can yell and scream all day talking about they're the party of Lincoln and oh, how they were the ones that freed the slaves. But today's Republican Party, and this is for all these Simple Simon Negroes who love talking about how it was Democrats that founded the KKK. Factual, Southern racist Democrats. But you had Northern Democrats who also were against that as well. They love touting these things. They love touting the radical Republicans. But the reality is the people today that are ardent supporters of Confederate monuments is the Republican Party. And they're the ones who are banning books. They're the ones who want to completely destroy Black history. They're the ones who are attacking the Smithsonian. They're the ones who are trying to rewrite the history when it comes to this year and the 250th anniversary. And we need to understand that, listen, there is no, when you compare, and this is not about, oh my God, you a D or R. No, this is real simple. If I have to make a clear, precise decision on which party aligns with racism and discrimination and the denial of Black history, if it's between the Democrat and the Republican Party, that is a no-brainer. It's the Republican Party.
There are a few important points here, Roland, about what you just talked about, and in particular is, I'm currently in the state of Florida, and we just know just yesterday in terms of what happened, the 3-judge panel in terms of the Woke Act in the state of Florida. So the other thing what you're describing, Roland, people need to understand is we have party affiliation and then ideology. So we're dealing with ideologues that, like you said, switch Democrat, Republican, depending on the decade. It's about defending white supremacy and about ideology. And people need to understand that. And some do, Roland, and they're just pretending like it doesn't exist. So the attacks that we see today are similar attacks that Black folks faced decades ago. And I want to connect a couple timelines really quickly since I'm in the state of Florida. I want to go back and say, you mentioned Hamburg, and then mentioned Jackson State and South Carolina State. I want to know right here in the state of Florida, we had the Rosewood and the Ocoee massacres. So the idea that what happened in Hamburg in the 1800s, more than a century later, Black folks were still doing some of the same issues. And we know that you talked about the Red Summer of 1919. All these issues, all these timelines in terms of instances that occurred are once again centered about maintaining white supremacy and oppressing Black folks, particularly, like I said, whether it's on colleges, campuses, or other places, to make sure, and I made the connection in Stop Woke Act, that certain political views are not expressed. Now, the other point is about some of these Confederate monuments is some of them were built in the North. So this idea of, it's just about heritage. No, some of these monuments were built in places that were fighting on the opposite side. So once again, it's about ideology, and it's not about, certainly about political affiliation. And it's important as we move, closer to the midterms, that Black folks really understand that you have to be very careful in terms of who you're voting for, And like I said, not voting this, in many cases that this person represents a particular party, but what are their ideology and beliefs? And are they anti-Black, which is most important?
As I was sitting here looking at the Zen Education Project, there was something called This Day in History. And of course, today is July 9th, but I clicked July 8th. And I was aware of this because I read Stephen Kinzer's book, Overthrow. And for folk just to understand with what's happening in Iran, what you're hearing from Marco Rubio as well as Donald Trump when it comes to Cuba, or when we think about how recently they want to send back Haitians, but if you don't even understand your history, how it was the United States that occupied Haiti, that participated in the blockade, that destroyed that country when it was a dominant force, economic force. Right here, July 8th, 1898, Hawaii annexation. And Hawaii was its own country, had a queen. The United States overthrew that country without firing a single shot because the white plantation owners did not want folks there to determine their own destiny. And so we took that country over. More than half of the population would sign a petition called Petitions Against Annexation, but the United States did not care. I love this right here. And it says, who was in favor of annexation? Just look at who was named governor of the newly annexed islands by President McKinley, Sanford B. Dole, D-O-L-E. For those of you who think about Dole pineapple and canned goods, yep, same company. And so this country decided to take over that country and control it because it was economic interest. That was the basis of it. That's just American history, and we are still doing the exact same thing today. So, Reese, when people hear these conversations coming out of D.C., what's in the national interest of the United States, 98% of the time, they're talking about American business, big business.
That's right. That's right. I mean, what they're trying to do right now, their primary goal is to just make America whiter again. That's why they're trying to purge this country of immigrants, even people who are here legally and through documented process. They're trying to purge them, and they're importing a whole bunch of white trash Afrikaners. So, yeah, I think that their goal is not just a capitalist goal, because to be honest, it's very disruptive when you take hundreds of thousands of people out of the workforce, people who are paying taxes and not necessarily extracting benefits from those taxes out of the workforce. And then you ship them off somewhere. And before you do that, you put them in these internment camps. That's not good for business either, unless you're Donald Trump's homies who are getting these no bid contracts. But other than that, yeah, I do think that this whole thing is about making people richer and making the country whiter.
It cracks me up, Greg. It really does. Is when you deal with, you encounter a lot of people, and maybe it's not their fault, but I'm gonna call them stuck on stupid anyway. I had a brother. So there was this banter, conversation going back and forth on threads as to whether or not the Essence Music Festival should move to another city. And folks have talked about Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, other places. And I had made a remark about something that somebody said was factually incorrect. And this one brother jumps in, and people don't even understand something that, the Essence Music Festival is in New Orleans because of the Black American history. So he's talking about FBA. He's going on and on and on. And I'm like, you really are dumb, aren't you? I'm like, dude, if you don't understand the Haitian and the French influence on New Orleans, because that's who used to control New Orleans. I'm like, you ever heard of the Louisiana Purchase, the largest land deal in American history? I mean, I was sitting here, so this fool is going on and on and on, talking about the rich Black American culture. And again, I'm not dissing Black American culture, but I'm like, you clearly have no understanding of the culture of New Orleans and where it all came from. And this is what we're dealing with. So with the Donald Trumps of the world, what they desire, they want white people, black people, Latinos, Asian Americans, they want everybody to actually be clueless about the history of this country and how we got here. They don't want people to know that the Queen of Hawaii was arrested at gunpoint by U.S. Marines. They don't want people to know that the phrase Banana Republic was created by us because we helped overthrow the Central American countries because of the people who own the plantations. They don't want people to know and understand what happened to Patrice Lumumba in the Congo. They don't want to know what happened, the role that we played when it came to Nkrumah. I mean, we can go on and on and on. They don't want anybody to know any of those things because what they want to continue to uphold is this notion that America has always been about righteousness, about good, and about how God has completely blessed us in everything that we do. But they don't want to know the ruthless history of the Dulles brothers and so many others when it comes to how we got to where we are today.
No, they don't, Roland. No, they don't. And you know, as usual, you put it as Joe Madison would say, where the ghosts could get in. Ignorance only serves those who see themselves as oppressors. You've given us the litany, and isn't it ironic that people want to move from New Orleans because in nearby Baton Rouge, let's just add another massacre, another killing, state-sanctioned killing by police who invaded and occupied in 1972, November 1972, the campus of Southern University at Baton Rouge at the order of the governor, Edwin Edwards, and killed Leonard Doug Brown and Denver Smith from Louisiana, two Southern University students who were there. The ignorance and the pain commingle. There is a particular experience of African people who were trafficked and ended up in what is now the United States of America. And it must be recognized. There must be standing. There must be justice. But that justice will never come by cutting ourselves off from the globe. And you know, there's no one in the foundational Black American, the Black First, whatever and let's be very clear, many of those people are operatives or bots are used to disrupt. But for those who are sincere, those who are well-meaning, those who are really giving articulation and voice to their pain, hear me carefully. There's no one in your movement who knows more about the experience of African people in Louisiana, including resistance and uprisings and struggles, than a white man named Kevin Roberts, the head of the Heritage Foundation, who earned his PhD from the University of Texas, Austin, writing on that subject. Please understand that your open enemy studies us. And when we don't study ourselves, it's almost like going to a fight. They've got machine guns and tanks and atom bombs, and you come out there butt-ass naked with a paper straw saying that you fighting for our people. When you cut yourself off. In fact, since we're talking about New Orleans, let's talk about another son of New Orleans, Louis Armstrong, who went to the Congo and who told the people, those spies from the State Department, y'all need to leave Patrice Lumumba alone. Louis Armstrong, who went to what was the Gold Coast at the time and performed before Kwame Nkrumah, and whose wife Louise went back for the inauguration of Kwame Nkrumah and helped him, in fact, get his tie straight and his cummerbund straight as they brought him to the ball and said, Louis can't be here, but I'm here for you. And she was there with Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, Mordecai Wyatt Johnson, Adam Clayton Powell, Ralph Bunche. You have forgotten the fact that we have always stood in solidarity, and at those moments, whether it be Dwight Eisenhower, who ordered the hit on Lumumba, whether it be young punk-ass John Kennedy, who after Lumumba was killed, his ass wasn't even warm in the seat in the Oval Office, was like, oh my God, and then upped it. Whether it be Lyndon Baines Johnson dropping napalm on people in Vietnam, you are claiming allegiance to a criminal enterprise, and at the moments when they think you're going to get together, two things happen. They loosen up a little bit on you. You think Brown versus Board of Education was because they had a change of heart? No, they looked at all those African countries and all those countries in the Caribbean that were beginning to form to take their independence, and they were trying to stop us from linking, so they gave you a few concessions. And the second thing is they then give the hit order to take out everybody they can. Ask some people in Iran. with the million-person funeral they're having for Khomeini. And by the way, Khomeini's body is not in Iran tonight. It's in Iraq. You know how many Shias are in Iraq? Or the hit they ordered on Salvador Allende in 1973 in Chile, or all the hits around the destabilization of Maurice Bishop under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. Whenever they think you're trying to get together, they drop the hammer and try to stop it. Ask yourself, FBI, if we're so strong by ourselves, why in the hell is it that when we're by ourselves, you catch the most hell, and when you try to connect with everybody else, that's when you make the most progress? I'll wait for the answer.
It just amazes me how folk just have literally no clue about real history, American history. And Larry, I'll give you the last word. That farce on the National Mall, which is why no one showed up. I mean, you had 500,000 people who celebrated in 1976. You barely had 200,000 people who came through there. Barely. Because you know why? It wasn't an American celebration. It was a Donald Trump. They completely co-opted the bipartisan committee that was established. They forced the money to come to them. That was nothing more than political masturbation of Donald Trump. That's all that crap was there on the Mall of Washington. That's all that was on the National Mall.
Yeah, it was the epitome of Make America Great Again, right, Roland?
No, it was the epitome of Make America White Again.
Well, I mean, yes, exactly, right, the same thing. But listen, I mean, these folks don't really care about the history in terms of, what the black folks have to deal with. Certainly not any of our ancestors in terms of the struggles and, Jim Crow, Reconstruction, and being enslaved, et cetera. And you're right. And I lived in D.C. for a long time, and I've never seen an event, certainly of that size, have so few people and so few people that look like us. It circles back to the point you talked about earlier. But these, we talked about building monuments, and essentially this event was a monument to his ego. And as a result, I think even some folks who maybe voted for him are now being turned off and didn't show up in D.C. But once again, it's another example of, also the grift. You talk about a lot of these no bid contracts and some of the other shenanigans we heard about. This happened leading up to this event and during this event. But once again, there's a reason why, a lot of folks didn't show up, is that it's a monument to ego and not focus on celebrating, for some people, this milestone, this country's milestone.
Absolutely. All right, folks, got to go to break. We'll be back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget to support the work that we do. Join our Bring the Funk Fan Club. If you want to contribute via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here on the screen. That's also for credit cards. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com for more information. Text and money order. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 2003 7-0196. PayPal's R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle. Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. We'll be right back. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281. Folks, this episode is sponsored by Kalshi, the largest prediction market in the United States. Here's what makes Kalshi different. You are not playing against a house. Kalshi is peer-to-peer trading. You buy a yes or no contract and whether something will happen, and you're trading directly against other users. Think of it like buying or selling a stock. The line isn't set by some algorithm working against you. It moves based on where the money goes. Public opinion sets the price. Right now, when you look at the World Cup, Argentina is trading at 75%, meaning a $100 trade pays out $132.71 with the correct prediction. And as that probability shifts, you can buy in or out of your position at any time to lock in a profit or cut a loss. Kalshi is CFTC approved. It's federally regulated, which is why it's available all across the country, including California and Texas. So download the Kalshi app and use code SOCCER10 to get $10 when you trade $10. You can also sign up at kalshi.com/r/soccer10, which auto applies the code at checkout. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade what's next.
Medicine and science under attack. I want to keep you and your family informed and healthy. I'm Dr. Ebony Hilton, and I knew at the age of 8 that I wanted to be a doctor. So I studied hard and became the first African-American female anesthesiologist hired at the Medical University of South Carolina since its opening in 1824. And I always say I was made into a doctor, but I was born to be a mom. And as a new mom, wife, sister, daughter, and friend, I understand how frightening a medical crisis can be. I care for individuals on some of the worst days of their lives, and it's my mission to provide you with a safe space to gain clarity on issues affecting your mind, body, and soul. I recognize that there are health disparities, particularly as it pertains to race, and I want to help bridge the gap between you and your healthcare providers. Join me every Thursday for Second Opinion on the Black Star Network, where each week I'll invite experts from various medical fields to share the latest health news. We'll discuss topics such as the vaccine debate, mental and sexual health, medical bias, infertility, menopause, andropause, nutrition, and aging. Together with my medical colleagues, we aim to provide you with a second opinion. Don't miss it, Thursdays only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Bishop T.D. Jakes, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Folks, if you want to know how dumb, stupid, and racist some Republicans are, all you got to do is look at this group of 11 Republican lawmakers led by Texas Congressman August Pfluger. I ain't never heard of him. They actually sent, y'all, this is not The Onion. This is not The Onion. They actually sent a letter to the WNBA Commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, demanding the league take accountability for, quote, multiple attacks against Indiana Fever star guard Caitlin Clark. In the letter, Clark is described as, quote, the face of your league and someone who has generated fan interest, increased television ratings, and new corporate sponsors. The letter suggests that the third-year guard is on the receiving end of, quote, unnecessary physical hostility and violence, such as hip checking, eye poking, and recently being struck in the throat. The lawmakers said they're concerned by reports that, quote, attacks against Clark may be racially motivated. Former Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Boomer Esiason, who hosts the radio show in New York City, this idiot came to her defense after a recent scuffle on the floor. This is what that fool said on the Boomer and Geo morning sports show.
On Clark, I would seriously consider going to play overseas somewhere and get the royal treatment and get real money.
From the Saudis?
From somewhere. I mean, there's international.
She can't go to the Saudis.
Well, she can't go to the Russians either, as we saw that, Brittany Griner got stuck there.
She did. Well, yeah, in jail.
Right. So
can't take that money from PIF.
But a lot of the women actually do play, in European leagues because they supplement their income. but now supposedly their income is going up here. And I know that Caitlin makes a ton of money off the court in terms of endorsements, and rightfully so. But I think that there's a petty jealousy, and she's a straight white basketball player. And she is not being treated with any sort of respect whatsoever.
So that poster.
Oh. Congressman Pfluger said this here in a tweet. I'm putting the league on notice that if it keeps letting the violent targeting slide, they could find themselves facing a DOJ and EEOC crackdown for violating federal civil rights law. Y'all, these white people, I just need y'all to understand, white conservatives view Caitlin Clark as the great white hope. They're like, oh my God, we've got one of our own who's going to the WNBA and she's going to show up those black lesbians. That's literally what Boomer was just saying. See, they hate the WNBA because they've been socially conscious. They were actually far more progressive when it came to Black Lives Matter than NBA players. And not just the black players, the white players too. And so they're just beside themselves. Oh my God, how dare you hip check Caitlin Clark? Those things don't happen to black players. I wonder what Lisa Leslie and Maya Moore, I wonder what Cheryl Swoops, Candace Parker, hell, that's just black people. I wonder what Sue Bird, Diane, we could go on. Do y'all know how dumb this shit is? This is how insane. These white folks are truly snowflakes. So let me just be real clear. What these white folks are saying is, can we please give Caitlin Clark, our great white hope, preferential treatment from the black people? Y'all saw what I just did there. That's literally what they're saying in this letter. Can y'all give our great white hope preferential treatment than the black people? Because she's one of ours. Now, never mind the fact that Caitlin Clark is like, that's basketball. So I wonder, can somebody tell, where were these white Republicans when the Detroit Pistons had the Jordan rules? I want, where were these white Republicans, Larry, when they used to allow hard fouls in the NBA that didn't result in being thrown out the game? These white conservative snowflakes are pathetic.
Yeah, Roland, you talked about, Jordan and Jordan rules and the Piston bad boys with Lambeer and all those guys, and Jordan used to get clothesline every other game when they played the Knicks all the time. But Caitlin Clark, and anyone knows watch the show, I'm a big sports fan. So Caitlin Clark has become an avatar to whiteness. And it shows you how not only race and gender are weaponized, very similarly to we talked about those Confederate monuments, right? These are avatars to white supremacy in many respects. Another point you made is in terms of the WNBA being very socially conscious historically. But no one has anything to say about the black queer women who were consistently under attack online and various other ways in which they've received death threats now and before Clark was there. But, you don't see any letters to the commissioner on those issues. And so, like I said, Roman, she's become this avatar. And certainly, this ridiculous letter members of Congress have signed and sent to the commission of WNBA is this another example of, like I said, in terms of, intersection of sports, politics, race, and gender, and privilege, in which Caitlin Clark is certainly benefited from in terms of them, these individuals members of Congress sending a letter as if she's being sent off to war or something. It's ball. Play ball. You're going to get fouled hard. She's a young player. She has to earn their respect. And that's just the way it goes when you play ball. You get fouled hard sometimes.
Well, of course, the idiot in chief was going to weigh in. And so here's this fool.
So if he did something wrong,
Come on.
I thought your young, wonderful basketball player, Caitlin, I thought that she was treated rather rough, if you want to know the truth. That was a much different kind of an event. That was a pretty bad event. But
see, these are some soft-ass white people. Y'all have got, this is not right. This is just, she's your golden goose. When Magic and Larry Bird, this is also, there's no explaining white stupidity, white racist stupidity, Reese.
I think the explanation is they want to use her as an avatar to act like they are protectors of white women, when in reality, Donald Trump, don't you owe EJ and Carol $5.8 million? Don't you got to pay it? That's today. You got court cases you need to tend to. So to talk about Caitlin, or how this party, or how the Republican Party has stripped women, including white women, of citizenship where they do not have autonomy over their bodies, forced births. This administration has been nothing but hostile towards white women, and yet they still want to put themselves forward as the protectors of white women. Mind you, what they talked about sound a lot like affirmative action. Now, we know that white women were the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, but let's see. Pay her more because she's white, let her do less work because she's white, and give her perks because she's white. I thought y'all was race neutral. And we see she get her head knocked around by the white girls just as much as anybody else. Now, it would actually give me a little bit of a key if people were doing it to her intentionally because they want to make an example of a white girl. But I don't think that these black chicks out there with their little lace fronts and their nails done, just trying to get a couple shots off and get some little Nike endorsements or some Reeboks or whatever, are out there thinking about Caitlin Clark. And most of the black women that we are the big names, their demographic, their crowd, don't have even an overlap with Caitlin Clark's crowd. So she is not a factor except for to these old white men who any other time don't give a damn about white women's lives or about protecting white women.
We all know Trump's an idiot, and so therefore the likes of Scott Jennings are also pretty stupid as well. Listen to this whiny ass fool.
No offense to everybody else, but Caitlin Clark is about all you got. She's the face of the league. And now Caitlin Clark is getting some support from Capitol Hill. I hold in my hands a letter signed by several friends of the show, including the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, August Pfluger. I see Zach Nunn on here, Tim Burchett. We've got John Rose, Aaron Houchin, friend of the show. A lot of members of Congress on here. And they have sent a letter to Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner of the WNBA, laying out their concerns about how Caitlin Clark is being treated. They say, as commissioner, you have an obligation to ensure that every player competes in a safe and professional environment, both on and off the court, free from violence, discrimination, or retaliation. It is imperative that the WNBA take meaningful action to address these issues. They ask the following questions be answered by July 24th. What is your review mechanism for physical...
See, I can't listen to that dumbass any further. See, this is when you know. You don't know shit. Scott Jennings knows as much about the WNBA as Stephen A. Smith knows about politics. Which is nothing. Which is nothing. Nothing. And Caitlin Clark, that's about all you got. Paige Buchers would say, that's bullshit. Aja Wilson would say, that's bullshit. I mean, we could just keep going on and on and on. I mean, this idea that Caitlin Clark is the only star of the WNBA. It's just dumb. It's beyond dumb. She came into the WNBA the same time as Angel Reese. When you think about the other players that have been picked for the WNBA All-Star Game, then you're looking at some serious ballers. And a thing that also trips me out when I see this, when I see these fools talk, again, they clearly, they follow nothing. They don't follow anything. I mean, this is the list of the WNBA All-Stars. Aaliyah Boston, who came from South Carolina, baller. Paige Beakers, Caitlin Clark, Natasha Howard. Olivia Miles is straight ass baller. Kelsey Mitchell, Jessica Shepard, Breonna Stewart, baller. Gabby Williams, Aja Wilson. Then you got Sonia Citron, Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, Kiki Irifian, Jonquel Jones, Marina Mabry, Dominique Malonga, Naneka Mikey, Kelsey Plum, Angel Reese, Courtney Williams, Jackie Young. Listen, one of the folks, I just hate that she got issues up here. My girl Kennedy Carter from Texas A&M. I mean, straight baller, but that's the problem right here. That and this. That's Kennedy's problem. That's why she just got cut by the Las Vegas Aces. But she's a baller. She can't control her emotions. She should be absolutely one of the stars. But the whole point here is, Greg, it's also dumbasses. Oh, Caitlin Clark saved the NBA. It lost money for 27 years. Can I just remind people? Matter of fact, let me just help some people out. If you want to understand the history of the NBA, the NBA was founded, y'all, on August 3rd, 1949. August 3rd, 1949. If you read Bill Russell's book or any other history, you will realize that many of those owners struggled. Do y'all know why Bill Russell refused to attend the Hall of Fame ceremony when he was inducted as a player? Because he refused to be inducted because Abe Saperstein, founder of the Harlem Globetrotters, was in the Hall of Fame. And Abe Saperstein was the reason why black ball players were kept out of the NBA, because he had a lock on black ball players with the Harlem Globetrotters. And the Harlem Globetrotters actually generated more money when they came to play in NBA arenas than the actual NBA teams. So the NBA held off on black players for Abe Saperstein. That's why Bill Russell refused to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's just a fact. Bill Russell has talked about it. So early NBA owners struggled. They made more money with hockey. Y'all, go check. Go check when the Boston Celtics were sold. They were basically sold for a piece of pie. I mean, it was just, the number was just utterly ridiculous, okay? And so that first wave was Oscar Robertson, Bill Russell, Casey Jones, Sam Jones, those St. Louis teams, George Mikan in Minneapolis, and they moved to L.A. That was the early iteration of the NBA. Then you go to the 70s, all right? ABA comes along. Latent black ball players roll the way they want to. And then you had the merge of the ABA and the NBA, okay? And then, of course, you had the drug issues in the late 1970s. 1979, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird play in the NCAA Finals. They both come into the NBA at the same time in 1980. I want y'all to do the math. So let's see. NBA was founded in 1949. So Magic and Larry comes in 30 years later. When you hear these idiots go, well, the WNBA, they lost money for 27 years. Magic and Larry are credited with saving the NBA. They begin to become profitable. And then, of course, you go into the 90s, Michael Jordan, then that whole explosion, International, David Stern, and now where you have it today. So the NBA financially struggled for 30 years. Magic and Larry, black, white, LA, Boston, they really saved the NBA. It's Boston, LA in the finals. So when these idiots go, well, the WNBA sucked for 27 years, you were a fledgling league and you had to methodically build. So just like Elgin Baylor, Oscar Robertson, Bill Russell, and others were stars in the early days of the NBA, so was Cynthia Cooper, so was Cheryl Swoops, so was so many of those, Tina Thompson, all of them played for my Houston Comets. But this goes to show you these dumbasses know nothing about basketball or the history. Their whole desire, Greg, is to hold up Caitlin Clark as the great white hope, and everybody else are nothing but role players in her symphony.
Yes, sir. And it's unfair to Caitlin Clark. Sports is race war. Let's be crystal clear. The reason they say Bird and Magic saved the NBA is because one was black and one was white. Let's be crystal clear. By the way, Scott Jennings, I really enjoy Scott Jennings. After he got off his podcast, hope he called Mitch McConnell to have another 20-minute conversation with himself with whatever's left of Mitch McConnell in the phone, unable to answer. But that having been said, let's be clear. It's race war. It's very clear about that. And as you talk about that, you know, when I was 20, 21 years old at Tennessee State, I didn't miss a women's basketball game. My girl at the time played. She was a forward from Holly Springs, Mississippi. Excellent. Shout out to Charlotte Ratcliffe. And we would go to the women's game. And I fell in love with the women's game of basketball when I was in grad school at Ohio State. You'll remember this, Roland. There was a little league formed called the American Basketball League, the ABL. This was a partially players-owned basketball league of professional women. Katie Smith, I remember her. She played in Minnesota, I think, for the ABL team. Then eventually went to the NBA's franchise, the WNBA. And David Stern, a diminutive little racist, who was the commissioner. And you can say he's not a racist. Well, let's just look at him. I mean, remember the dress codes? Remember coming down on Allen Iverson and all that? Remember the whole, where's this entourage coming from? As if he doesn't know what an entourage is. I'll leave that alone. But they put the ABL out of business by funding something completely out of the NBA called the WNBA. Why? Because the women's game, the way the ABL was set up, was to put it in places where the game was already thriving at the college level. They had a team in Columbus, Ohio, where Ohio State was. That's why there's a Connecticut Sun. They replaced the team that was there because UConn. They had a team in Knoxville. Remember when Pat Merritt was stalking the lines?
Pat Summitt. Yep.
Pat Summitt, not Merritt. Pat Summitt. Thank you. And I'm raising all this for a very important reason, Roland. It's a race war. There was nobody better than Shamika Holesclaw, who was before Candace Parker at the University of Tennessee. And we can talk about all the great women stars, but let's fast forward to today. The WNBA, shout out to the women who have negotiated a new contract. They went from an average of $120,000 a year being paid in 2025 to an average of $600,000 in the players agreement, the negotiated bargain that they made this past spring. They are now well established, but the first step for the NBA was to put this halfway player-owned organization out of business. A lot of people don't remember that. The NBA is a business, and race war is a big business. So Caitlin Clark is a little unfair to her. I'll tell you, my favorite player in the WNBA to watch right now is that little point guard at the Minnesota Lynx. You're absolutely right. It was at TCU last year and Notre Dame before that. Olivia Miles is not bullshitting. And if this fool, this hillbilly from Kentucky, Scott Jenkins, thinks that stadium is rocking in Minneapolis, Minnesota because of white girls, he's lost his mind. There are white women on the team, there are black women on the team. But in a race war, the hillbillies have already lost the race war at the WNBA level because the WNBA crowds that can afford tickets, because the New York Liberty, which has a great team, they keep going up. James Dolan got to get out the game at some point. They're pricing their fans out the league. That's the discussion now in the WNBA because the WNBA fan base, working class people, poor people, trying to go to the games. Now that they're starting to, the prices are beginning to be priced out of some of these markets. But I'll just say this. In this race war, it's funny how these twists and turns take, right? LeBron James said, I'm not going back to the Lakers. So you got Luka, okay. Luka's down. You got the man they call Hillbilly Kobe. playing. What's his name? The shooting guard for the Lakers, the white dude. Oh, I can't think of his name. Austin Reeves.
Austin Reeves. Yeah.
And then you got a white. You got Walker Kessler. That's 3 white stars for the Lakers. And now you got black people saying, "Wait a minute. I thought NBA standing for nothing but Africans." Nah, because you might have a Lakers team led by 3 white stars. You think people gonna burn their jerseys just because you got those 3? What you're faced with in this country is the fact that these white nationalists, and of course, remember that case that we saw at the Supreme Court week before last, that case where Trump is now able to move these administrative appointees out at the level of the National Labor Relations Board. All this. So when he threatens with the EEO lawsuit, this is the last gasp of white supremacy. I would encourage Caitlin Clark to go overseas and make some money. Her sisters have negotiated so that they can begin to make money in the neighborhood of what she's already making with endorsements. And for all the white folks who want to make her their avatar, y'all leave her alone. Y'all leave her alone to go out there and get them same elbows and shoves that everybody else is getting before you set off race conflict in the locker rooms. Because I'm going to tell you, I was never a college athlete. I played the hell out of it in high school, though. And I'm telling you, when you come in a locker room with this stuff, you're going to make things harder for them. And last I checked, Scott Jenkins doesn't look like he would throw rice at a wedding, wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit salad, and wouldn't throw a rock in a ghost town. So you better not never go in no damn WNBA arena talking like you talking on your podcast with your 5 o'clock shadow beard that you can't grow fully out. Talking like that, because you might find out that somebody going to make you back up that smarm that you vomit all over CNN in real life. Y'all ain't got the courage God gave you. Leave Caitlin Clark alone to play the game. And remember that this audience that watches the WNBA is laughing at you if they think about you at all.
So let me say this for the people who are utterly confused as well, because I love when these idiots cite how much money Caitlin Clark is making off the court, and by saying, oh, go overseas to make more money. Again, these are people who know nothing about sports. The reality is the overseas teams always paid more money for women's basketball because they have a great appreciation of that. Just like overseas, if you run track, you can make more money than you can in the United States. But would a Caitlin Clark not go overseas? Because she can make $20, $30 million off the court. And for everybody who's utterly confused, let me remind y'all, if Michael Jordan or Magic Johnson was actually paid what they were worth on the court, they should have been making $100, $200 million a year. Basketball players, NBA players, have always made more money off the court than they did on the court because of their shoe contracts, because of commercial endorsements. Kevin Durant's NBA salary is dwarfed by what he makes off the court. But again, this is about race, and this is about white conservative snowflakes protecting their great white hope. And what they desire for Caitlin Clark, and they want to, and for all these fools, oh no, she's the greatest woman ever to play basketball, is an absolute joke when it comes to Lynette Woodard, Cheryl Miller, and a whole host of other people. She might get there one day. She ain't there now. Just because you're great in college does not mean you're going to be great in the pros. But again, these are the same people who thought Jerry Cooney was going to beat Larry Holmes. I'll be right back. All right, folks, let me tell you about Chapter. Now, if you're on Medicare or about to be, the system is not set up to work for you. Too much fine print, too many plans, and too many people making money off of your confusion. And look, we're used to this. We're no strangers to systems that don't have our best interests at heart. But we don't have to accept it when it comes to Medicare. That's why I'm telling you about Chapter. Their advisors are independent and honest. In fact, they're the only Medicare advisors that compare every plan nationwide. And they're focused on one thing: what works for you. If there's a better plan out there, they'll find it. If you're already in the right one, they'll tell you that too. There are no games. Just last year, people who switched with Chapter saved an average of $1,100. It's 20 minutes and a real person. It's completely free. My parents actually have already called. My mom sent me a text. Folks, give Chapter a call at 724-264-8281, 724-264-8281, and connect with someone you can trust. Folks, these are the kind of services that we need for our audience here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network. So call Chapter right now, 724-264-8281.
Hey, I'm Tasha Cobbs, and you are watching
Roland Martin Unfiltered. But I need a little filter. I need something. Blow me out. Make me look 35.
Two fatal shootings in 4 days by the Federal Crime Fighting Task Force that's supposed to keep Memphis safe. In both instances, officials say the two men allegedly pointed guns at the federal agents who are part of the Memphis Safe Task Force sent by the twice-impeached, criminally convicted felony-in-chief Donald Con Man Trump. According to local reports, Wednesday's shooting happened when the Drug Enforcement Administration was serving a drug-related warrant issued in Shelby County. The unnamed suspect refused repeated commands to open the door, prompting officers to make a forced entry. 2 days before, the two Tennessee National Guard members assigned to the same task force fatally shot 20-year-old Tyron Johnson during a downtown foot pursuit. Authorities said Johnson turned toward the guardsman while armed with a handgun. His family has disputed aspects of the official account and is urging investigators to release any available body camera or surveillance video from the encounter. Tennessee State Representative Justin Pearson released this statement regarding the shooting, saying another Memphian has been killed by a Memphis Unsafe Task Force member. My heart is with the family of the man killed yesterday and with the family of Tyron Johnson, killed just 3 days ago by the same task force. I oppose the Memphis Unsafe Task Force from day one as a dangerous authoritarian overreach that will turn our communities into militarized zones and criminalize and terrorize our residents. My worst fears have been realized. 2 Memphis residents are dead in 4 days. That's not public safety. That's a tragedy playing out on our streets. I'm calling on the TBI and the FBI to launch a full independent investigation into every shooting this task force has been involved in since it arrived, not just this week. This week's all of them. And I am calling again for this task force to be disbanded immediately. Memphis does not need soldiers and federal agents patrolling our streets. We need to stop losing our neighbors. We cannot let the killing of American residents by military and federal law enforcement personnel who treat our city like enemy territory be normalized. This is not normal. It is outrageous, devastating, and deeply un-American. Folks, let's talk about Mississippi and the Nolan Wells case as his family awaits the autopsy results, the independent autopsy results. Speculation of what happened to the 18-year-old grows. Brian Trasher from the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer organization that assisted in the search for Nolan, told CBS News he was flying a plane over Horn Island when Nolan's body was found. Trasher said that with all the crowds out in the water that day, he finds it hard to believe no one would have noticed a distressed swimmer.
Yeah, I was told that there was a boat he thought he was going to get on that was leaving and that he might have been trying to swim to it. The only problem I have with that story is that if the people in the boat knew he was trying to swim to it and they saw him getting carried off with the current, they would have known about it. They would have been able to react to it. Not only that, even if that wasn't the case, if he went into the water at all and became distressed, it was so crowded that day that it seems hard to believe that nobody would have noticed a distressed swimmer in the water. So again, it's a story I was told. There's a lot of reasons why I question it. What I do know is that he went out there with a number of boys that has been his regular friend group since he was young. They were ready to leave at about 3 o'clock. They told him it's time to go. I was told he had started talking to a young lady and he wanted to hang back and keep talking to her, and that he would believe that he could get another ride. Now, some people have been criticizing, saying, "No, you never leave your friend." Well, technically, they didn't leave him. He requested to stay behind. And if you know anything about how these barrier islands are and how they're used recreationally, people go out there on one boat, they might come back on another boat. Like it's almost like a community ferry system, because not everybody has a boat, and you might jump on with another group of friends, whatnot. What we have to find out is, after his friends left, who was Nolan in contact with, Who did he believe he was supposed to get a ride back with? Did that boat give him a ride? Did he get on any boat? How did he end up in the water? Did he wade into the water on his own? Did he get on a boat and fall off? That's what we have to find out. On those particular islands, you're not allowed to like camp out or be there after dark. And so the rangers, as it gets to be sunset, they start running around looking for, if there's still any boaters or people out there saying, hey guys, it's time to go home. So I would not think that Nolan was just wandering around the island when it got dark. My instinct tells me that he got off the island, either tried to swim off or got off on a boat and somehow ended up in the water. But because of the Rangers' presence, I don't think it's likely that he just spent the night on the island or was there after dark.
Again, we'll wait for the autopsy results. All right, y'all. This nutcase, a white Christian nationalist pastor from Arizona, Dale Partridge, who is the lead pastor of Kingsway Reformed Church in Prescott, Arizona, is facing condemnation for his racist sermons. He claimed that God assigned black people a civilizational station of subordination and dependence and advocates for return to European colonization in Africa. A group known as Right Wing Watch, a monitoring project of People for the American Way, has been tracking Partridge's sermon series, which is based on the curse of Ham. This interpretation of Genesis has been discredited, yet it was used for centuries to justify the enslavement of Africans. Y'all want to hear a racist idiot? Well, here you go.
God has sovereignly assigned different stations and trajectories to different peoples for his glory. The Japhethites have been blessed to be enlarged in both territory and Christian regeneration. We see that in this passage. The Hamites have been assigned to a civilizational station of subordination and dependence. And the answer to this paradigm is not endless foreign money. That's not the answer to this problem. The answer is to return to European Christian colonization of African nations. I believe that's truly the answer, and let me tell you why. It's the only thing that has historically worked, that has shown fruit. I'm not talking about overtaking Africa. I'm not talking about enslaving Africans. I'm not talking about exploiting Africans. But I'm talking about establishing order, godly leadership, and carrying the gospel to their lands. In fact, the only times that African nations have seen significant and sustained civilizational improvement, and I'm talking about infant mortality rates going down, I'm talking murder going down, I'm talking disease going down, tribal wars ceasing. The only time Africa has ever seen that happen in being sustained is when they have come under Japhethite supervision. We saw this in colonial Kenya, Botswana, dramatically in Rhodesia. White Christians turned a broken third world territory into a thriving first world Christian nation in less than a century. You have a continent that has been struggling for literally millennia. And then you bring in a handful of European Christians, and they turn that in 100 years into a first world nation like that. You just go, why? How did that happen? Why does that work? When supervision is removed, which it has been, the pattern always reverses. And we have painlessly saw that in Zimbabwe, previously Rhodesia. And what this teaches us is that nations are downstream from, well, let me say it this way. Nations are not just downstream from religion. They're downstream from race.
Pretty stupid to think it happened just like that. No, it didn't. Then, of course, you got the sexist-ass pastor of Pete Hegseth, Doug Wilson, who says that, Reese, you should not be voting. Listen.
Now, you've called for repealing women's right to vote, which is protected by the 19th Amendment.
Right.
Why?
Because it's a good idea. No,
a lot of women wouldn't think so.
A lot of women wouldn't agree. Right, but this is one of my favorite questions now too. Mm-hmm. This is not an XXXY chromosome issue. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want women voting.
period. That's just what he said. These are the people, frankly, the GOP loves, Reese. Hegseth has had this guy praying at the Pentagon.
Okay, you got Colonel Sanders and a little night walker thinking that they superior to somebody. Both of them can go the fuck to hell. Okay, you couldn't get either of them to even tell me to step to the side, get out of line, go here. They couldn't tell me shit. So this is just nothing but a little fantasy for them. Why don't y'all colonize Montana and South Dakota, and then all the whites over there, they have good health care? Don't y'all white trash hillbilly vice president, isn't he hillbilly elegy? Wasn't he talk about his family being on all kind of opioids and shit, living in the trailer parks? Y'all ain't done too well in states or in places that are predominantly white out here. A lot of white areas that don't have nobody's African nobody ain't doing worth shit. So I feel like Donald Trump was supposed to do America first. What happened to that? Worry about the white shit that's going on here. Because it looks like y'all trying to prune off the white population in America. And maybe this whole shit about going back to Africa is just a distraction from the fact that y'all done cut healthcare subsidies. You're messing up the climate, all these heat waves and shit. Nobody is getting energy conserving support now with air conditioning, heat, and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it's just talk. That's all it is. Nobody's listening to them of any importance. Pete Hicks said he's a degenerate, but I think he would be a degenerate with or without Colonel Sanders as his pastor.
And Larry, just in case anyone thinks that I'm making up Pete Hegseth and Doug Wilson, here you go, right there at the Pentagon, praying. So this is who MAGA endorses.
Yeah, Roland, let's make the connection between Hegseth, this Colonel Sanders type that Reese described, and the fact that he won't promote any black folks and women, right? So it all aligns. I want to make two other points about this comment about, this guy talked about, basically Europe recolonizing, countries in Africa. Listen, important note, Homo sapiens came out of Eastern Africa. Okay, that's first. Second of all, he needs a history lesson in terms of what the Moors did when in Spain and Portugal and civilized both those countries. So this idea that somehow, like I said, that everybody black, really. Let's keep it 100. Like I said, you as far back as you want to go, the first folks were black and came out of Eastern Africa. So he needs a historical check, and also just this idea that women should be subordinate and shouldn't have the right to vote. White women got the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, but black women had to wait. So I don't think you're going to find black women interested in any of this nonsense he had to say.
Greg?
No, I agree. And like Dr. Walker said, like Larry said, I mean, the 19th Amendment is one of those non-self-enforcing constitutional amendments. So that's one of the ones that they would then go in and try to change through congressional statute, not constitutional amendment. I think is it a commandment? Y'all forgive me, I don't remember it. But is honor thy father and mother one of the commandments? No, that's not a commandment. I don't. It's in the Bible, right? You hillbillies need to honor your father and mother. That's us, as Larry said. And even if you don't want to go back to the origin of humanity, there's nothing in ancient Europe that comes close to ancient Egypt. In fact, ask the Greeks where they got most of their stuff from their architecture to their astronomy to their notions of mathematics and philosophy. Come to medieval Africa, there's a reason why those maps of Africa that showed up in Portugal were there, because y'all was looking for Mansa Musa in the west and Prester John in the east, because there's something that you don't have in Western Eurasia that we have in abundance in Africa. What is it? Oh yes, gold. Oh yes, every other mineral as well. As you were finding ways to try to eat each other, and whatever was left of an animal that died, we were actually sitting with salt and spices, and the story they tell our children in the age of exploration. Well, why you got to explore? Why? Because you got mutton and half-eaten birds, and any man named for a bird, Mr. Partridge, and where the bird lives, Dale. It seems to me is that your real name? But anyway, the point is this: there's a common denominator on these little men. Look at them. Look at the people who follow them. And I don't want to resort to this, but when you look at them and you look at us, what you'll see is this fundamental difference. These are deeply insecure. men. I mean, I don't use the word involuntarily celibate lightly. These are men who appeal to other men who have found the Western concept of masculinity something that has left them wanting, quite needy. And because it has found them wanted and quite needy, they need avatars. They need other men who remind them of their own insecurities to speak through their bird chests, or let's, be consistent, their partridge chests, with enough force to give them some hope, as the little flame that flickers in their chests that was often extinguished when they asked girls out for dates or to the prom. The little flame that was in their chest that often got extinguished when their drink they sent to a table was returned at the bar or the club. The little flame that is in their hearts that was extinguished when somebody walked by them as if they couldn't see. In other words, the little flame that no human being should have extinguished, that is based on a Western concept that some people are just born better than other people. Those people have been pressed so far down to the bottom that when one of them who resembles the rest of them rises up and bleats the bullshit that we just heard, they find a little bit of hope. But here's where the whole bubble busts. This is where the whole bubble busts. You can't, through that type of talk, you can't erase reality. The reality is that Mr. Partridge's favorite sports figure probably doesn't look like him. Perhaps the woman of his dreams doesn't look like him, but he can't say it out of his mouth. You have to wait till after midnight when he doesn't think anybody is looking. Go ask Matt Gaetz and the rest of them. His children's heroes are probably not him. I'd wager that since he graduated from high school at California and stopped after that, that perhaps LeBron James probably has a greater part of his children's imagination than he does. What this is the last bleat of a dying way of life. Let it pass so that the rest of us on this earth can return to a time when how you looked was not something that mattered as much. Because as long as you keep propping this stuff up, you're going to continue to be on the bottom. And pimps like Rick Wilson, pimps like Dale Partridge will continue to pimp you. They will continue to pimp you. And as far as the rest of us are concerned, I agree with you, Reese. We're not paying y'all no attention.
Well said. Let me thank Larry, Reese, and Greg for being on today's show. I appreciate it. Y'all have an absolutely great one. Folks, a couple weeks ago, I talked to Senator Mark Warner at the Virginia Commonwealth Gala, and he talked about, of course, the craziness happening with Donald Trump, Iran, and intelligence in this country. Check out what he had to say. It is crucially important that you understand what's going on. Joining us right now is Senator Mark Warner, the senior senator here. Now, Senator, on the rundown, everybody has 7 minutes.
Hold it, not U.S. senators. We get more than 7 minutes.
You had 7 minutes. I was sitting. I said,
you want me to talk fast?
I said, I think he gonna go a little longer than the 7 minutes.
Well, listen. I can just say yes and no. Trump a jerk? Yes.
Well,
first, but let me take 1 minute of this to just say to the audience what Roland does in terms of presenting, not just the black point of view of America, but the fact that he is willing to put himself out, to hold all of us accountable in a way that communicates and says it in a much more real way than most people in journalism, is important, because at this moment in time, people are giving up because it feels like the deck is so stacked against them. And this young man, Roland Martin, still calls it straight and keeps us in the fight.
I appreciate it. That's the only way we can do it. Let's talk about it. Lamont said, you said this is going to be the last time you serve, running again. Lamont said, so we want to make sure we heard from him for a little bit more. You're on the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee. And you made a joke in there about that. That's a perfect example of where we are. The clueless leadership that is in place for our most sensitive secrets. That speaks to me how grotesque the person is sitting in the Oval Office that will just put a housing dude over all intelligence and think that's going to fly.
This man, Mr. Trump, has no respect for national security. we all know he doesn't care about affordability, doesn't care about the American people's, cost. But the idea that he would insult the literally tens of thousands of people who work in the intelligence community by putting somebody totally without merit in a position, the fact that he would be willing, there's a very critical intelligence tool called Section 702. He's punting on that until he gets his voter disenfranchisement bill, the so-called SAVE Act.
And he ain't getting it.
He ain't getting that. No, there is no way, even with our Republicans, that was a bridge too far.
I love hearing Speaker Mike Johnson blame the Democrats, and I'm like, hell no.
Hell no. Hell no. And then on top of that, and we talked about this when we were together in Norfolk and in Petersburg, the fact that for all the flaws of the American military, for particularly African Americans and women, once it was opened up, this was a path based on meritocracy. And now that this guy Hegseth has got a vendetta against black generals, flag officers, women, that makes us less safe as a nation when he demotes or gets rid of people that have risen to their position by merit.
And there's a board that said they deserve the promotion, and to act like their perspective and their analysis is irrelevant. And what was offensive to me, here's a black admiral, number 1 on the board. You say no, but the number 3 guy gets promoted, who's a white guy, but then they want to talk about DEI and merit.
Yes, it is. This is not just about what's morally right and fair. It is about the frickin' security of our country. And anybody who is a black, Latino woman, we have to acknowledge, rising through the military where there's still that network, you have to still be twice as good. And the fact that finally things were starting to get adjusted where people of merit rose, and to bring back almost this Jim Crow approach, it doesn't help the security of our nation. We're a nation that's, at least Virginia, we're 20% black in Virginia, we're 9% Latino, 8% Asian, 52% women. It's not just morally, but if we don't take care of everybody with a fair shot, the enterprise called Virginia is not going to do as well.
Speaking about that issue, it was a year ago at this dinner. I believe, did we strike Iran or somebody a year ago? Because you had to actually...
We struck Syria a year ago.
Yeah.
So tonight
we
fired
strike on somebody.
Iran. And and if one thing that anybody that's a student of history, you cannot bomb a country into submission. Remember, we're going to bomb North Vietnam into submission. You can't do it. We were going to bomb Iraq into submission. Now we're bombing Iraq. If you want to take over a country, you got to put troops on the ground. And no American wants to put troops on the ground. And one of the things that has been totally forgotten with the normal press coverage, the Iranian people, this is a country with a great culture and history. Since the Ayatollah came in, they're bad folks in terms of being, religious zealots. But one of the things that Trump agreed to in this so-called memorandum of understanding, he said America would no longer try to interfere in Iranian affairs. This is the same Trump that during January, when the Iranian people were out hundreds of thousands on the street saying, we want a more free society, and Trump said, don't worry, we'll be there. Now he's basically saying, screw you all. The Iranian secret police can kill all of you, and we won't have any effect. And that loses American credibility in a way that you can't repair overnight.
Here's what I think I struggle with the most, and that is, and I remember President Biden talked about this here, Vice President Harris, they kept talking about guardrails of our system. They're talking about parameters and the founding fathers and what they expected. And what I said is, yeah, they thought that what would happen is even if a person was in the White House and their own party would say, no, you've gone too far. The problem here is you've got Republicans who have completely abdicated congressional authority. I mean, they control the money, and they're like, okay, you can do whatever. And so we've never had a situation where an occupant of the Oval Office is threatening companies or saying we're going to take an equity stake out in your company. He was bragging about his own commerce secretary, making his own commerce secretary give him $25 million. He was bragging about it in his new book, and I'm like, okay, Comer, okay, Johnson, okay, Jim Jordan, okay, what the hell are y'all doing?
Well, listen, I was a business guy before I got into this stuff. I still believe in a fairer capitalism, not the one we got right now. But for all these business people who I know very well, they all say, Mark, oh, we're just trying to cut a little thing. We got to deal with the current. They are going to be held accountable. I got no interest in, going crazy, but you cannot break the law with impunity this way and not have, when we come back, some adjudication of selling out.
It's pardons. I mean, it's like if you got $1 million or $2 million bucks, pardon, and they have stolen from people, and he's letting them keep the money.
Yes, sir. And they have now taken, just so we know, I think sometimes people think everybody in politics must be crooked. But one, that is not totally the case. But if you just want to talk about the $1 billion of your money, my money, and your money that Trump is spending on ballrooms, arches, reflecting pool, when you think about the fact that he's taken a $400 million plane from a country Qatar, and when you think about the number of people who have been convicted, the Honduran president who got convicted for massive drug issues, and he got a pardon when we're now blowing up speedboats in the Caribbean. This is not who we are as a country. I hope and pray, but if we don't right the ship, if we don't vote in record number, people are going to basically screw up the system. The system is rigged to a degree, but if we can't unrig it, people will give up.
And I think, listen, he's already said, y'all got to hold the House or they're going to impeach me again. Mike Johnson just the other day said, hey, basically, I'm the protector. I'm going to look after y'all. We got to hold this thing. When you say stuff like that, that means you know there was legal stuff that was done. And that, to me, is what is so bothersome. And I was raised to respect the office of the president. And I was very adamant. I remember when I was on the CNN, I would say President George W. Bush. President George H.W. Bush. I would say President Barack Obama. I cannot use that word with him because I have never in my life seen someone who denigrates people, who trashes people, who trashes allies. He trashes black women. He trashes people he doesn't like. He calls them names. He, as the vice president digital for the National Association of Black Journalists, he has attacked numerous black female journalists. This man has no respect, no decency, no morals, no values, no nothing. And I'm sorry, folks have got to understand that allowing him unfettered rule for 2 more years absolutely can hurt this nation.
That may be the place, beyond all of the political issues or voting issues or abuse of health care, the thing that may get him will be the corruption. Making analogies is not always great, but there was this guy, Viktor Orban, who was like the Hungarian Trump before Trump.
He sent J.D. Vance over to help out and got his ass kicked.
He got his beat 3-1. And what finally turned the Hungarian people saying, we are not going to allow this corruption. And I think a lot of folks who voted for Trump, when they see this level of corruption, I think there's a chance. But if Democrats come back, Democrats are good talkers, but oftentimes not good doers.
Yes, I've been very critical.
Amen, you're right. So ultimately, if we don't get stuff done that accomplishes people's lives, one thing Trump has done, he's willing to break the glass in an awful way, the way he treats immigrants, for example. Right. But if we don't stand up and say, first of all, as Democrats, we're going to say, nobody in Congress or president can trade stock. Supreme Court's got to have an ethics and an age limit.
Absolutely.
We got to make sure that if there is another government shutdown, the people that should suffer are Congress and their staff and the White House and their staff. Until we are willing to show we're willing to self-police ourselves, we're not going to have credibility on that, the fact that we need to return to some ethics. You know, and one of the things that is, I think that Democrats screw up on, particularly white Democrats sometimes, is, I shouldn't say, they presume African-American community is very liberal. African-American community is one of the most conservative communities around on issues of faith and values and ethics. And we need to not just talk the talk, but walk this about telling the truth and respecting that it's taxpayer money and acknowledging when we screw up, that we screwed up.
Listen, if Democrats control the White House in 2028, they got to figure a way to not let him take that plane. Because, he's not going to put it in the museum. He's going to use it as his personal aircraft. And $400 or plus million of taxpayer money went in to fortify that.
Which went into switching around and taking out the bugs that Cutter put in.
Yeah, so I'm like, no, he should be able to keep that plane. A couple of more questions. I spoke to Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries 2 days ago, and in our conversation, he cited Virginia, how it energized the ground, energized the base, how it micro-targeted African Americans, put investment on the ground. He mentioned stuff that we did with Speaker Scott.
And we did together.
Yes, sir. Yeah, in referendum. What are you telling other Democrats and also these progressive billionaire donors that they cannot continue trying to use a model that's 30 years old, that they're going to have to invest more time and more resources, or they're not going to see the turnout?
Well, the old school of, get on local TV, get in the local newspaper, show up in church on the last Sunday in October for 15 minutes.
Right.
Isn't going to get it. So we have to communicate through tools and media like you. We have to communicate through social media in a way that, there is, in the city of Richmond, there is no real newspaper anymore. The historic African-American paper, the Free Press, has gone down. But even the Richmond Times-Dispatch has gone. And unless you communicate with modern tools, online and social media, and one of the things I think is going to change, we have to deal with influencers, but we need to be ahead of where I believe, Roland, politics will head, maybe not this year, but next year and by 2028, where people will maybe not listen to their social media. They're going to ask their chat bot. So how do we make sure the chat bots are not based upon historic, prejudicial? That's one of the things I'm worried about.
And the chat bot is based on what's fed into it.
And that's why, particularly like on housing, if we feed in all of the historic housing trends that were totally discriminatory against people of color or immigrants, what's going to come out is going to perpetuate that. This stuff around how we manage technology in a way that is fair-based. I think the AI stuff, I spent a lot of time on this tonight. Data centers got to pay their way. These companies got to make sure we make a job transition, because what is going to happen, my fear is that the people who are going to get screwed the most are recent college graduates. And the people who are going to get screwed of those college graduates are first-generation college growers, because they don't have the historic network where daddy or somebody else can help them. And that first generation are rural white, black, Latino, and immigrant. And if we don't get this right, we're up the creek.
Last question. There was a lot of drama this week because Democratic Socialist victories in New York on Tuesday. And this was my response. I said, guys, New York City, that may work there. That ain't going to work all around the country. But what I did say, that instead of Tish James, love her to death, being angry, people mad at Zohran Mamdani, I said, study why they won. They organized, they mobilized, they had a message, and they talked to non-traditional voters. For the people who are complaining about folks who lost, maybe they should be studying why they won.
I'm fascinated with Mamdani. I'll be anxious to see whether he succeeds, because mostly he's been, until the rent freeze, there's not a lot of policy stuff. But, I'm a nerdy tech guy. Biggest thing we could do, we have a tax system and an accounting system that totally supports people investing in things like technology and stuff, not human beings. If we train and gave the same tax breaks for investing in a human being, and if we could give an extra tax break for investment in a human being that may have come from a disadvantaged standpoint, and call that investment, even on a balance sheet, an asset, because now it's viewed as an expense. I know it's nerdy, but we have to shift the whole paradigm on investing. If not, we will have a world where I'm not sure humans are going to play the role they need to play. And that is going to happen at a rate. That's the thing. Congress is so damn slow, but we can't do a 2 years, 5 year study.
Right.
We got to get our act together now.
Well, again, to me, I think what's going to happen in the next 5 months, in order for Democrats to succeed, they've got to stop, you said earlier, just thinking you're going to dump money on television and radio.
Amen, brother.
And they're going to have to, Joe Madison, God bless his soul, always used to say, you got to put it where the ghost can get it.
A lot of time
you got to be on the ground.
Yes, sir.
You got to be touching people. You got to be communicating with them, asking them what they want. And again, I say you got to organize and mobilize. And so that's the only way to win, because this MAGA agenda, it is absolutely about defunding Black America. They are attacking every facet of Black America. And I'm calling them out every single day. And Democratic leaders, from Senator Chuck Schumer and party elsewhere, are going to have to understand that folks want things done. They don't want lip service.
And part of that, and we still got to figure, the traditional way right now is go at people, knock on door, and drop you a piece of literature. I'm not even sure that works. We got to find a way where people can, using the tools that people communicate, particularly young people, where they can make a personal connection to somebody they know. I'm not sure the door knock and a piece of literature is the way to do it. I'm not sure 100% what the right answer is. We got to try new things. And whether you agree with Mondami or not on his issues, we sure as hell ought to learn from his tactics.
Absolutely. Senator Warren, I appreciate it. Condolences on your daughter.
Thank you, Will.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Folks, that is it for us. I'll be broadcasting live from Houston tomorrow, so I look forward to seeing you guys there. Hey, if you want to support the work that we do me a favor, join our Bring the Funk fan club. And if you want to contribute to us via Cash App, use the Stripe QR code. You see it right here. This QR code is also for credit cards as well. If you're listening, go to blackstarnetwork.com, blackstarnetwork.com, and you can get more details on how you can join. Checks and money ordered. Make it payable to Roland Martin Unfiltered. P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 2003 7-0196. PayPal is R. Martin Unfiltered. Venmo, RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Download the Black Star Network app. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Samsung Smart TV. If you want to get, of course, Roland Martin Unfiltered swag, do me a favor. Go to shopblackstarnetwork.com. T-shirts, hoodies, wall art, mugs, all that good stuff. Plus, we got our America 250 shirts. Let's show the James Baldwin shirt, please. James Baldwin. That's the James Baldwin shirt right here. You see the quote there. Then, of course, we got Paul Robeson, Harry Belafonte. We got Dr. King shirts as well, bags as well. So, y'all, go to the site, shopblackstarnetwork.com. And, again, support our Black-owned products. If you go to our marketplace, all these products you see in my studio, all of them are available at shopblackstarnetwork.com. Every single one of these products, these are Black-owned companies. We got to support our Black-owned companies. And so when you buy those products on our site, you also are supporting this show as well. Don't forget, download the app Fan Base. Follow me at Roland S. Martin. Y'all let me know when y'all have that graphic where I'm going to be tomorrow in Houston. So I want to check that out. And so there is a new app that's launching. I'm going to be speaking at the launch of this app. It's going to be helping Black-owned companies find business. Find local, state, and federal contracts. And so if you want to attend this, go to firstbidpro.com. You can RSVP to info@firstbidpro.com. And we're going to be located at CIEL 4411 San Felipe Street, So you see the QR code there as well. So I'll be speaking there. So I'll be doing the show from there as well. Also head to Houston. My dad's brother passed away, so head to his funeral tomorrow, my Uncle Melvin. And so I'll be spending time with family as well. And shout out to Savannah State. I'm rocking y'all Nike shirt today. And so I appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Shout out to Savannah State. Folks, that's it. I'll see y'all tomorrow right here, Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla!